the first day of CJI has happened, the first ever Craig Jones Invitational. So the Jiu-Jitsu Oracle is here to give our thoughts on the show. And then we're going to come back on Tuesday with a full recap of everything we've seen at CJI and everything we've seen at ADCC. But because it was the inaugural event from Craig the Jones Invitational, we want to just give an initial reaction as to what we thought. I'm Ross. I'm joined as always by Calum. This is the Jiu-Jitsu Oracle. Like, subscribe, and give us your comments. First, we're going to talk about the show as a whole. Then we're going to talk about the overall Jiu-Jitsu that we saw. And then we're going to give some quick thoughts on the over 80 and under 80 divisions as they stand after the first day. So, Calum, on the show as a whole, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there was some question marks coming into it, given the inexperience of the people organising it, whether the production quality would be up to scratch, how the show would look. I thought, all in all, it was pretty good. I liked the overall feel of the show. I think the mat looked great. I think the overall production looked great. I liked the fact that we only had one mat. It was very personalised, each mat, every competitor had a walkout. We just got to sit back and relax and focus on that one match that was on. Didn't have to kind of follow several matches at the same time. No opening ceremony or annoying speeches taking up time. So that's another bonus for CJI over ADCC, in my opinion. I liked the commentary teams. I thought the post-match interviewer was very good, very articulate and knowledgeable. Some cool other things like writing your name on the board. I thought that was a cool little thing to add in. The things I found annoying are just kind of like small gripes personally. The YouTube ads while it was going on was quite annoying. The fact that you would skip back in 5 to 20 seconds later, and yes, you can rewind and rewatch that, but it does somewhat spoil it, especially if something big is going on in the moment. And then the in-show adverts were somewhat annoying, but I don't think they were excessive, to be honest, and they were quite manageable.
I thought the production was good. I thought 9 hours for a show is absolutely too long, and there was no need for it to go as long. I think 6 hours max is what you want. Having attended live events in arenas and sat on plastic seats watching grappling, 5 hours is ideal. So I thought the show overall was too slow paced, and they should have quickened it up. You want to get match after match happening. I think the fact that when I clicked to watch the show, the first couple of things I saw were adverts, and it took 10-15 minutes to get the show happening, was too slow. They should have had two guys in the alley right away, ready to go, because they've made a big thing about how ADCC puts too much into production and pageantry, and they're all about action. And I thought off the bat, it didn't quite happen. I thought the attendance was very, very poor. There's no getting away from it. There are a lot of empty seats at the arena. I don't know if they should have ran in a different city, such as LA. I don't know if they should have ran on a different weekend. I don't know if they should have had more ticket-selling athletes, not athletes you just want to tune into YouTube to watch, but guys who you want to go and see live in person. I'll have to have a good think about it over the next few days, and I'll share more opinions. No getting away from it, though. They did a very good job not to show a lot of the arena on the broadcast, and not to show a lot of those empty red seats. But I did think it was a pretty poor show from a turnout perspective. I think the claim that there were 1 million live views at the end of the show is totally misleading. I need to do a deeper dive into how YouTube statistics work, but I know if like you go in and out and in and out, they all count as separate views. What I really want to know is how many unique users spent a significant portion of time watching that show. Now, when I was watching, it seemed like there was 100,000 people also watching the show at the same time. And sometimes it spiked a bit higher than that. So I think, and that's a great number. I'm very happy that the Craig Jones Invitational got that, but that's a more accurate statistic to be working with as to like how big's this event, rather than saying like, you're kind of like getting the suggestion out there that 1 million people watched this. I mean, if 1 million people watched it, that would be like a really, really popular sport on mainstream TV in America that were watching that event, you know? not NFL numbers, not going that far, but like, you know, something like if hockey or basketball's getting 1 million, I think that's good numbers. So yeah, I think that's overblowing it a bit. Calum, you want to cut in there?
Yeah, I could be wrong on this, but does the views post video, the amount of views, does that not represent how many accounts have watched that video, not how many people have went in and out? Because last time I watched the video, the overall views post live stream were about 1.1 million.
Okay, we're going to get into this in future, and like I'm going to do a deep dive into YouTube statistics, but I believe if I watch a video, come out of the video, and then start watching the video again, that's 2 views, okay? So, it's not, I don't think they had 1 million individuals at any point watching that show. Like I said, I think that the statistic that there's 100,000 people watching the stream is probably like a more accurate representation is the kind of number that we're going to draw. And I think if you use common sense, the fact that like it was a very, very kind of empty arena kind of shows that the amount of reach that this promotion has. So anyway, I want to do more digging as to how many people watching.
And apparently they're going to be transparent with the numbers as well, so we should get good data on that.
Good. So, but to your points on the positives, I thought it looked great. The production was brilliant. It was lit well. They had screens. They had a little bit of pyro as well, despite kind of slagging off the ADCC for doing a bit of pyro. The interviewer was great. So, like, that's all positives. I just want to know a bit more about the numbers, and I can't shy away from the fact that, like, that's a poor turnout for a live sporting event. So, what about the overall jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, so this might be the most exciting single day of jiu-jitsu I've ever personally seen. Can't say it's the greatest of all time because I've only been watching jiu-jitsu since about 2016, but in my experience, obviously potentially some recency bias after just witnessing it, but most exciting day of jiu-jitsu I can remember seeing. I think the over 80 kilogram division was very good. A lot of good matches. I think that was a good overall division, but I think the under 80 kilo division lived up to the name of being the best bracket of all time. I think that was an unreal division. Every match was amazing. Some like absolute scraps, some really cool technical jiu-jitsu to watch. So I think overall, great jiu-jitsu, especially in the under 80 kilo division. I think the round system worked really well for making it exciting jiu-jitsu. Yeah, you can make the argument that that maybe helped certain styles over others, but I think like the unique things about this event was the rounds, obviously, the judging, and the pit. I think the pit was amazing. There was no reset. I thought the referees did a great job. Big bonus for them over ADCC. They were not annoying. They were not overly giving out penalties, and they did call the stalling and they did encourage the action, but they were just way less annoying and way less willing to get in the way of the action as well. The wall made it so the ref didn't have to get into the way of the action. I think the wall didn't hamper the jiu-jitsu, but it added a cool element, especially for entertainment factor. I think if I was to pitch jiu-jitsu to someone that had never seen jiu-jitsu and I could pick any event of all time that I've personally watched, I would definitely get them to watch this. I think thinking about this from a non-jiu-jitsu educated person's point of view, it was like very exciting to watch. So yeah, like from an overall jiu-jitsu standpoint, I was very impressed with the day.
From an overall jiu-jitsu viewpoint, I want to say the guys who specialize on the feet really, really struggled. And it was interesting because as we've gone along and done our previous shows, we've had people diving into the comments and saying how much the wrestlers were going to smash it, and they didn't. I think like this is a sport that you need wrestling, but you need to have scrimmage wrestling, you need submission grappling, you need to be able to play in the legs, you need pins, you need escapes, you need the full game if you're going to play. I think you could take, I know Kurt Vliet didn't get a chance to wrestle against Fellipe Andrew, but Fellipe Andrew completely schooled him on the ground, and that is the game we're playing. So I think like overall, I know Owen Livesey picked up a win in the first round against Muhammad Ali. Then
he's a grappler these days, though. Like he's coming from.
He's got more of an all-round game, Owen. But then ultimately, when he played someone who's got even more of an all-round game than he does in Nicky Rod, he struggled in the second round. So I just think like maybe it was overblowing like how much of an impact the wrestlers would have. I think a pick on Luke Rockhold ultimately was wasted.
Yeah.
We've had grappling experiences, no doubt, in the gym. where we've gone against someone and we were getting the better of them and they started clowning around to take the edge off the round, or vice versa. We might have done that in rounds ourselves over time, but I thought that was like disappointing in his match, that he kind of knew he was losing, so he kind of like started throwing like fake knees and stuff like that. It just kind of took away from the match for me.
Yeah, that just looked like a serious athlete that really wanted that $1 million versus someone that was kind of just there for the fun of it. Pat obviously looked amazing in that match, and then he had a pretty close match that he ended up losing a decision in. Later on, I seen a tweet from Bo Nichols saying that the judging was ridiculous for CJI and yada, yada, yada. And I think it's just another wrestler crying after entering a jiu-jitsu competition and then moaning because they didn't manage to win jiu-jitsu scoring. So if you're a wrestler and you're going to enter a jiu-jitsu competition, you need to win the competition with good jiu-jitsu, not just wrestling. So,
what do you think about the suggestion that some of the scoring was a bit inconsistent? And I think, just before I get your thoughts on it, Calum, that to me there was rounds where it was like there was quite like a wide breadth amongst the scores that were coming out, and I think when you see really, really good judging in MMA, there's kind of like a consistency across the board with how people are scoring it, and maybe it's judges getting used to the rule set because this is a new event with a new scoring system. But I did think some of the scores coming in were a bit wider than I would have expected, and then some of the scores coming in were there were definitely like disagreements among the judges as to what was happening. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I think some of the more controversial decisions turned out to be mistakes on parts of the judges. I think they must have been using a keypad and they'd clicked the wrong key. So like the more controversial ones that come to mind, I think they were corrected. My thing on the judging was like beforehand, looking at the judging criteria, I was thinking there's going to be a lot of potential for people with the poorer jiu-jitsu to win the match, just because the main criteria was aggression and initiating action. And actually, I don't think most of the matches were judged by that, which I'm happy about. And I think for the most part, the people that displayed better jiu-jitsu won the match. So from that point of view, I'm happy. But at the same time, I don't think it makes sense because I don't think they judged it off of the criteria they put out, where the number one criteria was initiating action, number two was submission attempts, and number three was positional control. I think submission attempts probably ranked somewhat higher, like marginally higher than positional control. I think positional control, judging off of like how they actually judged the matches, was ranked pretty highly. And I think actually it ended up being the person initiating action that was kind of like, if nothing else happened or everything else was equal, that's what it was actually judged on. So like that's what it seemed like, which I'm happy about because I think that's how things should be judged, but it just seems like quite inconsistent from what they put out. It seemed like if all else was equal, they were going to give it to the person initiating action, not initiating action over everything else, which I think would have been ridiculous, and I'm kind of glad that it wasn't seemed to be judged like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. But I think ultimately, like, for introducing a new scoring system that was meant to make it easier and clear up controversy and all this kind of stuff, I don't think it really has. I think we're in the same position that we are when we watch IBJJF or ADCC. We're questioning some things that are going on. So it's a good scoring system. It worked well. I just don't think it's any better than what we've seen already. You're right to praise the referees. I think they did a good job. You're right to praise the alley. We've said before, when we first reviewed events that we'd seen in karate combat, thought it was a tremendous setting because it stops wrestling on the carpet, which I think is absolutely ridiculous, and it stops constant need for resets from referees, which is very, very frustrating for viewers to watch. So I think the pit's amazing. If they could create 3 of them at the ADCC and have 3 matches running in them at the same time, it'd be great. And maybe we'll see more of it in grappling in the future. Probably not in IBJJF, which is a bit more traditional and wants to have jiu-jitsu on the map. But yeah, the alley, the pit, whatever you want to refer to it as, I think it's a great addition to jiu-jitsu, and it's worked really well in CJI. And like you said, the referees did a good job keeping the action going, giving stolen calls where necessary, letting action play out where necessary, etc. So from an overall jiu-jitsu perspective, I think it's a great event. It was exciting. It was managed well. So let's go a little bit deeper into both of the divisions that we've seen so far. Do you want to talk about under 80 first?
Yeah, let's go with that first. So we have 3, I believe, of CJI's top 4 seeds not in the semi-finals, and we have 3 of our top 4 seeds. So our picks were more accurate than the general population, which is nice. So we've got Hulk, who was one of our top 4 making it through. Levi, who took out the number 1 seed, Kade Ruotolo. They'll be facing off on one side of the bracket. And then on the other side, we have Kade versus Tackett. So let's start with Hulk, because he's the first one I mentioned. So he had 2 B-team bros back-to-back. Very much classic Hulk in his match with Kenta. He was just able to control the pace of the match, do enough to win each round, and kind of that's how it went in the match, similar to how I thought it would go. In the match with Joseph, actually quite surprising in the fact that probably seen Joseph doing to Hulk what we thought Hulk would do to Joseph, and then Hulk was able to snatch at the end of the last round a really cool calf slicer, which again I think just goes towards his veteran experience that he was managed to pull something like that out when he was probably down 2 rounds to 1 at that point. So not surprised to see him in the semi-final, but a good little run from him. Levi, one of the standouts in that division so far, I think for sure, managed to take out Roberto. Quite shocked, to be honest, that it's still such, not taking anything away from Levi, it was an amazing entry and finish, but like still quite shocked for Roberto, someone with so much potential, who's in a competition where he can win $1 million, that he's still got this quite glaring leg lock weakness. Like, you think he would potentially prioritize going somewhere for 3 to 6 months with some really good leg lockers and like really dialing that down, because I think if he does dial that down, he's like 100% capable of winning these sorts of divisions. So great performance for him in that match. And then against Ty, that was great. He managed to avenge his loss. I think Ty definitely looked severely injured towards the end of the third, and apparently he got somewhat of an injury at the start of the first. So again, not to take anything away from Levi, but he didn't quite look himself in that match. But Levi did everything he needed to do, and he managed to come away with the decision in that. And then moving on to Andrew Tackett, the guard player bully. He just absolutely ran through Nicky Ryan and Owen O'Flanagan. Starting with a match with Nicky, just looked like he broke Nicky within a matter of minutes, to be honest, and that was just it the rest of the match. So just completely running through his guard, taking him down at will. Very nasty sort of pinnings that he was doing with the shin on the face and everything. Some showmanship as well. And then with Owen actually caught a few like very close attempts. It's just when you've got someone as erratic and movement based and explosive as Andrew, actually isolating them and for enough time to get that submission is going to be an absolute nightmare to do. So amazing performances from him. And then Kade as well, really good back-to-back wins over Matthias Denise, who he pretty much ran through as well. And then Tommy Langacker, that was a great match to watch as well, but beat him pretty convincingly as well. So I think Andrew versus Kade is like 2 very brutal, explosive, physical guys that will be looking to scrap on the feet and get on top. So I'm really looking forward to seeing all those matches, and I think overall that bracket was amazing. What's your thoughts on that?
I agree. Let's talk about over 80. Let's talk about over 80. Let's keep it going. So,
okay,
what are your thoughts on the big guys?
Yeah, over 80, probably there's upsets in both divisions, but probably more upsets here. So, got Nicky Rod, who is in the semi-final. Everyone predicted that. I've got 2 words to describe Nicky Rod in the first day, and that is locked in. He just looked like he was not there to play around. In between rounds, very stoic. Afterwards, very stoic. Reminded me of the Kobe Bryant moment when he was 2 up and the reporter asked him, "Why aren't you happy?" And he said, "Job's not done." Very much similar with Nicky Rod in this. He's just looking like he's there to get the million. And I think at this point, it's very much his million to lose. I think now that Victor Hugo is not in the competition, and now that the 2 big wrestlers that were probably somewhat of a stylistic difficulty matchup for Nicky Rod are also not in it, I think stylistically he looks like he's got a very good chance of winning the million from now on. So I think it's his to lose. He'll be facing Adam Bradley in the semis. He managed to eke out 2 very close decisions, but you know, that's a win at the end of the day. So he beat Kyle Bain in his first match, who was a rematch from Trials, managed to avoid the leg locks and apply his own leg locks and submission game. And then against Pat Downey, who we spoke about, managed to eke out a decision attacking from his guard as well. So that's going to be one side of the bracket. Then the other side of the bracket, we expected to be Victor Hugo. I think that was the biggest upset. I had said when we were predicting that this would probably be the easiest one to predict and the most one-sided. I think when it comes to Australians that have got a good K-guard against bigger guys, should probably always take that into consideration. Seems to be somewhat of a factor at this point. So he's managing to follow in Lachlan's footsteps and get the inside heel hook against Victor. He then lost the next round against Inacio Santos, who will be in the semi-finals. He looks really good early in the first round, managed to take the back. He just couldn't carry that momentum over. I think it was a little bit disappointing how sweaty it got and the fact that they didn't dry him off in between rounds. I think that would have been a bit more fair to his competitor, but nonetheless he managed to make it into the final. And then Fellipe Andrew able to take out the Penn State wrestler first round. Not too much happened in it, but he managed to get the win regardless. And then a lot more exciting of a match against João Gabriel Rocha, which he was able to display a lot of his wrestling and guard. So that's going to be the other side of the bracket. I think Nicky Rod is very much favoured. Probably favour Fellipe Andrew to get past as well and face Nicky Rod in the final. But I think Nicky Rod is definitely the big favourite in that division.
I don't know how big a favourite I now place Nicky Rod if he meets Fellipe Andrew in the final. I do agree I would favour Nicky Rod to win, but I have been so impressed with Fellipe Andrew in this competition. Amazing attacks from guard. That triangle is a huge threat. We've not seen really the footlock brought out, but it's in his back pocket. I think Nicky will be on top playing in Fellipe's guard. I would absolutely not rule Fellipe out of this match. What an amazing back take we saw from him as well. So yeah, I've been super impressed with Fellipe. The two guys that have really impressed me are Fellipe Andrew and Andrew Tackett. So we didn't have Fellipe winning this division. We suggested it would be Victor. I think Victor got caught cold. If you are going to catch a favourite, the best time to catch them is early doors. I think Victor was kinda sleeping on the leg entry and got punished for it. Great leg attack from Kennard, but I think we ultimately saw where Kennard's overall game is when he lost in the next round. So pretty disappointed to see Victor Hugo go out because I love watching him compete. But yeah, like coming out of that side of the bracket, I think Fellipe Andrew's now a big threat to win the whole thing. And in the under 80, just to go back and touch on that, like that Kade v Andrew match is going to be absolutely amazing, and that's probably like the match of all the matches that have happened thus far and all the matches that are going to happen in the future. Like I'm most excited to see it, but you're going to have to wait until Tuesday when we have had the pleasure of watching the second day of CJI and both days of ADCC to hear our thoughts on that. Right, come back to you, Calum, for some finishing thoughts.
Yeah, one other big thing which I thought was very big news. Andre Galvão revealed that if there was another pull-out, he had said to Craig that you can just slot me straight in there. So he was willing. I don't know if you caught that, but they caught an interview with him. So yeah, he said that if there was another replacement after Lucas Canyard, he said for Craig to put him straight in there. And then the interviewer asked if there is a CGI 2, will you be put into the over 80 kilo division? And he said, yeah, absolutely. So I think that's really big news in and of itself and quite cool to see.
Okay, brilliant. Well, the ADCC kicks off 30 minutes from the end of this podcast. So, got a quick bit of time to upload it onto YouTube, and then we'll go and sit down and watch all the divisions running. But for now, that is our thoughts on what we've seen from CJI. And like I said, we'll be back on Tuesday, probably 5 p.m. British time, with a podcast chatting about the conclusion of CJI and ADCC.